Our gospel reading today comes from Luke 14, verse 1, and verses 7 through 14. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, "Give this person your place." And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon for a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you'll be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." May God add his blessings to these words.
Amen.
Well, as we heard in the three readings today, the first from Jeremiah 2, 4 through 13, and then Hebrews 13, 1 through 8, and 15 through 16, as well as our gospel reading, this how they tie together. So we start out with Jeremiah talking about idolatry and false gods. We become what we pursue. And so we hear in Jeremiah them being told through a call to justice that the people that are being talked about have changed their glory for something that does not profit. They chase after false idols. They worship things that cannot help them at all. And this is a reoccurring theme with Israel as they continue to turn their backs on God, losing patience, not having their prayers answered. Does that sound familiar? Turning to other idols to try and fill the void of what they're looking for. So we hear here that they're being called to task. They're being called to do justice and to free the oppressed. But yet, as we heard Irene read, they dig out cisterns for themselves to try and bottle up, to hold up that which is precious. But those cisterns are cracked and can hold no water. Therefore, they will always be thirsty. And so then we hear in Hebrews the theme of brotherly love. And it's really a template for ethics for us as disciples. How a community might live until they finish the race of faith and enter God's holy city. Glennon Doyle Melton wrote, "Be confident because you are a child of God. Be humble because everyone else is too." And so in Hebrews it says, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." And then we hear in Luke about a journey of humility, to humble ourselves, to live by a different social system of radical inclusion. And as I read, for all those who exalt themselves are going to be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And when we set a banquet should be for all. And that's the lesson of humility, of not doing the idolatry that we talked about in Jeremiah, of having brotherly love for one another, following the ethics that are called out, doing good by one another. And so after the retreat, I took a journey of humility myself. I took Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off. And so I've been feeling led for quite a while there's a trail at the base of Pineview Dam. It's called Wheeler Creek. And it goes up to a snow basin. You can go up to Snow Basin that way, and you can also do a loop and come back down into Wheeler Creek. And so the first time I ever went hiking was on that trail, and felt led there. It was I think it was in April, and spring weather. And through the journey, I was led to a point where I was told to stop and turn right and look down. And I've told this story before, finding this heart rock in between my feet, which was the first heart rock I ever was presented with and found. And since then, I can't stop seeing heart rocks wherever I go. So I was feeling a similar impression that this was a journey that I needed to take. And so I finally took it on Wednesday morning and followed the trail and felt led to keep my eye out for heart rocks. But nothing really seemed to be the one. And there's a fork you can take that goes through a real narrow canyon called Icebox Canyon, which is cold. It's usually pretty cool there, this icebox. And walking along the stream, I ended up at the base of some small waterfalls. And at the bottom of the pool, I waded out there, just felt led to wade out there and look. There was this heart rock at the bottom of the pool, waiting for me to find it. And I picked it up and just immediately started bawling. And then when I got home, I overlaid it with the first one I got, and they're virtually the same size. And so who knows how long this heart rock has been resting at the bottom of that pool, waiting for me. And so as I picked it up, this whole scene flashed in front of me. And so I sat down by the side of the stream and I captured it on my phone as best as I could in form of a kind of a poem. And I'm not a poet, so this probably needs some work, but it was in the spirit of the moment. And so I just had this rock next to me as I wrote it, and I said, a heart of stone I am. Perfection is not who I am. I'm just compacted minerals and dust. God said my fractured contours are a must. My rough and jagged edges tell a story about God's unending love, mercy, and glory. How I am made is not precious. Those who understand my God-given story make me precious. You may not think I can give life. My journey to inspire you tells of my strife. I once was something else before I became me. It took the hand of God to set me free. I was buried by the weight of the world. Over time to the surface I was hurled. A lifetime of seasons changed my shape. Finally, I plunged into God's waterscape. There I remained and trusted the stream. God's living water revealed its scheme. It eroded away all that was not needed. My purpose became clear once I conceded. Now you see what God has designed for me. Do you see your journey in me? There is a plan for you to see. Will you trust God to set your heart free? So I share that with you as what humility looks like, of that conceding, of that letting water wash away what is not needed in our lives, seeing the design, the journey that God has for you and me. And in that trust, in that conceding to let your heart be set free. That's what God is calling all of us to do. And just as I was led to this rock, I feel the same about this church, what I have brought up. I feel that this is still, for me personally, is still part of God's plan. And I know it's hard to trust and to let go. But for me, this verse of humility, to humble ourselves, to listen to what God is telling us physically, as well as spiritually. That's the journey of humility I think we're being called to. And so I offer that up to you in the name of Jesus, the Son of God. Amen. And now we come to that time when we share in our doxology with one another, and I'll turn this off.